Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez and this is Interviews from Quito, the program where we explore the big challenges facing this country and the region. In today's program, we analyze what's at stake for Ecuador in 2020. We just ended a year of massive protests against the neoliberal reforms of the government of Lenin Moreno. Will that still play a role in the months to come? And how is the political scenario for the country? For that, we have Mario Ramos, political analyst. But first, let's take a look at this video.
2019 left many important things for Ecuador in the political and social matters. The most important event was the national strike against the neoliberal measures announced by President Lenin Moreno. The country was in revolt for several days until Moreno announced the derogation of the Decree 883. The social groups weren't that lucky. The decriminalization of abortion was not approved, which left many people disappointed and upset. Ecuador still holds its agreement with the IMF, and this makes the people wonder what could go right or wrong during 2020. What's in the future for Ecuador? Follow our analysis.
So thank you for joining us, Mario. How do you see Ecuador going into 2020?
The
2020 is basically an electoral year where all of the motors are beginning and the candidacies are coming up and the electoral process is now beginning. With the detail that this electoral scenario has been changed with this national strike that was held in October 2019. Everything seemed clear until 2019. Apparently, Nebot was going to be the sure candidate. He was going to be the sure president. But after October, all of the scenario has changed. I think that the uncertainty is there lying, and there are no clear candidates up until now. I think there's going to be several outsiders. I think Nebot lost many possibilities in the highlands, and if he doesn't have any votes in the highlands, the possibilities have seriously diminished. His votes are just from the coastal area. He is not a candidate who has the numbers enough to allow him to win after October. There you have Lasso. Apparently he's not going to go up, or maybe it can be Alvaro Noboa. Well, he always participates knowing that he's going to lose because he has very slim possibilities. In the right, you can only see these two candidates, Lasso and Nebot. In the left, we're still awaiting the candidate from Revolución Ciudadana. It's not going to be Correa because of the prosecution that is going after him. I think that the best thing would be an alliance between the indigenous movement and the Correísmo, because this would increase the possibilities if there is no fraud, because that's another topic that should be analyzed. This could be an element that would impede a certain candidate or political party to reach the presidency. I think these are the elections where not only the internal elements will play, but also international elements will be at play. And in general, I think as a summary, that's going to be the scenario in the 2020.
And we're also looking at a government under Lenin Moreno that is not running for the re-election. Would that be the case? What happened to the government? Why is it not wanting to continue its legacy, at least for what the time has been?
Well, the government of Moreno did everything not to participate in the elections. He was really not interested. This is a functional government to the right wing of Ecuador. He's a political actor that ever since the beginning tried to destroy Alianza País and not strengthening, on the contrary, to weaken it, and thus giving the favorite part to his friends. I always saw it like this. Ever since the beginning, he has always acted to destroy Alianza País, even his own Alianza País, not even the new wing of Alianza País, but the current Alianza País. He's did everything to try to destroy it. So he really has no interest to participate in the next elections. On the contrary, he's doing everything to favor his friends from the right. I think that Moreno, that's what he's going to do. He's not going to have any role as a candidate in the next
in
elections.
2019 with the whole political scenario in Ecuador, specifically with the protests that were a big part of what's happening around here. I mean, it changes the way people see politics, social economics, everything in the country.
Well, I think that we must add the geopolitical and geostrategical element. United States has a lot of problems in Asia, and now even more with the recent events. It's going to have a lot of fronts that are opened. The United States has carried out a very aggressive campaign of lawfare and to recover and destroy national progressive processes in Latin America, like the one that happened in Honduras, in Bolivia, and the failure of the peace process in Colombia, the permanent interference in Venezuela. And the United States will continue in this process to regain the hegemony in Latin America. And from the political standpoint, they're going to keep on trying to hold the neoliberal framework. This has been proven. So I think that unfortunately the electoral processes in Latin America will be tarnished by all of the situations. Here in Ecuador, the Electoral Committee has announced that they will allow the participation of Compromiso Social, that is the political party of Rafael Correa, and they will also allow the participation of MAS in Bolivia. Apparently this is what's going on. But this is contradictory, because you ask yourself, why did they allow the coup d'etat if later they're going to let the MAS to participate, if they're going to win anyway? If they allow Compromiso Social in a clear way, in a transparent way, it's most probably that they're going to win, because that's what the polls say. We know that the credibility of Moreno is null. We know that he has been in alliance with Lasso and with Nebot. I really see that he has a very slim chance of participating. So I think I still doubt, because it's still to be seen, the transparency about these electoral process, because I don't think that the U.S. would do such effort to let themselves be won in a transparent election. And then we're going to go back to stage zero.
In the case of Ecuador, the case of these political prisoners, people that are connected to the former president Rafael Correa, that are in prison, that were in prison, that are following legal processes against them. What is their role in these political elections that are happening just around the corner?
Mira, justamente yo veo también
I see
que
that
la corriente correísta
the Correa position must strengthen their political movement. They should not insist in certain actors that either they're very weakened, or they're persecuted, or they're exiled, or they're living in an embassy. So if to persist in those actors would be a mistake, I think they have to renovate, and they should allow an alliance where they not necessarily be the main actors. I think that if there's a rational strategy, comprehension of the current events, and everything that is at play at the upcoming elections, they should give in and reach agreements so they can rescue the government and the country. Therefore, I think they should not repeat old tactics and old actors. They should find alternatives that the electorate find pleasing, and that they leave the message that they have learned the lessons, that there has been a self-critique, and that they are correcting any errors, and that they're going to present a new project of democracy for the government.
Any consequences of what might happen to the political situation in Ecuador if some of these rumors, these announcements that have been going on these past weeks about workers going on strikes again, like the ones that we had in October last year, would that have any effect?
Mira, yo no creo en el fútbol.
I really don't believe in the foot. They announced last year a strike, and they withdrew. I think that foot is not an actor that can be credible, because they allowed that Moreno's strategy be carried out with no restrictions. So they're not credible. And if they're not credible, they cannot go forward with a strike like the one that happened in October. But of course, they can do a focalized and weak strike. But that's going to be about it. And if they're alone in this strike, because of this lack of credibility, it is not possible that many other actors will participate with them, be this social movements or the indigenous movements. It's important to consider that the turning point in October was the 883 decree. At the moment, I don't see any event or any decree that may trigger the type of reactions that happened in October. So I don't think that's going to have much
economic
success.
hardships. They will continue in Ecuador. We still have the loan from the IMF. We still have minimum wage going up at least $6. We're still an oil-producing economy. We still are heavily dependent on oil. What's going to happen to our economy based on that situation?
Mira,
well,
la crisis económica fue una crisis
the economic
inducida.
crisis was induced.
No fue una crisis auténtica.
It was not authentic.
Recordemos que el Ecuador
Let's
estaba
recall
creciendo,
that Ecuador was
tuvo
growing.
crecimiento.
It had the growth already.
Entonces, hubo que inducir
So
una
it was
crisis
necessary
o,
to induce a crisis,
poner en la retina de los ciudadanos
or
la
to
supuesta crisis
to
para
make
justificar
a
justamente
crisis
el regreso
visible.
del Fondo Monetario Internacional
So in
y
this
las
way to
medidas
justify the
aplicadas,
returning
y la subida
of the
de la
International
gasolina,
Monetary
del gas,
Fund,
todo lo que
and the
pensaban
increasing
hacer, ¿no?
price of
Y todas las leyes
fuel,
que han aplicado en este momento. Entonces,
and all of the
había
other
que,
measures.
vender esa
So it was
crisis
necessary to
para
sell this
aplicar la
crisis
neoliberal,
so we
pero
could
en el fondo
apply
no
the
había una
neoliberal
crisis real.
project. But the truth is, there was no crisis at all. This is like what happened in Argentina. It's the same script. Argentina, the Kirchner Argentina, left Argentina well. And then Macri, when he came, he acquired debt without any need. So this is what happens to try to extract the richness and financial resources that exist in the current world. Because you need to put the country at debt to bring new resources, and this way to fuel the neoliberal project.
que se puede llevar a cabo este capitalismo financiero. Entonces, la crisis no es para
So
todos.
the crisis is not for
Eso hay que tener
everybody.
claro, la crisis es para el pueblo,
The
para
crisis
los-
is just for
¿no?
the
La
lower
crisis es para-
levels.
pero los bancos también
But
acaban
the
de anunciar
banks
que
are
han tenido
perfectly fine.
ganancias.
They have just
Entonces, no es igual
announced
la
that
crisis
there
para todo el
have
mundo,
been
¿no?
good gains in
Se ha
the
despedido
past
un montón de
year.
gente justamente para
Many people have
tener recursos para
been
pagar los
fired
compromisos
so
de
they can
deuda
have
sin razón,
the
¿no?
money to
Porque
pay for the
se
debt.
afecta el modelo social, ¿no?
And
Y-
what this does is to
y a
affect the
las
social
capacidades
model
que tiene el país, se va
and the
desprendiendo
capacity
las
that
capacidades
the
productivas,
that the
inclusive.
country
Yo creo que esta
has.
crisis fue
So I
una
think that
crisis inducida,
this
artificial,
crisis was artificial,
porque el país con otro modelo
because
puede salir adelante
with a
sin
different
depender del
model,
Fondo
the
Monetario
government
Internacional.
can succeed without
And
depending
also,
on the International
can
Monetary
we
Fund.
maybe see the possibility of Ecuador following the same path as Argentina when Macri left power? Before the last year, before the elections, he came and asked a lot of loans, became a lot of dependency on the IMF, on the international organizations, giving money to Argentina, and then leaving all that for the next president to take over. Would that happen in Ecuador?
A ver, mira, hay un principio básico
There's a principle
economía.
in
Sí.
economy
La economía
that's
es
fundamental,
política.
and economy
Responde a
is
intereses,
responds
¿no?
to
La
political
política
interests.
económica es neutral.
The
Una
neoliberal
política económica
policies
responde a intereses de grupos
responds
y
to
de
the interest
personas,
of groups
¿cierto?
and certain people.
Entonces, determinadas
So,
políticas
uh,
favorecen a unos
some
y
policies
perjudican a otros, o
favor
al contrario.
ones
Entonces, el modelo
and go
neoliberal
against
es un modelo
others.
que favorece
So
a
the
los más ricos
neoliberal
y
policies
exportan riquezas.
favor the
¿no?
richest people.
Nosotros, con el modelo neoliberal, lo que
With the
estamos haciendo es
neoliberal
desarrollando
model,
o superdesarrollando
what we're
a
doing
países
is
ya desarrollados.
developing countries that are
profundizando nuestro propio
already
subdesarrollo.
developed, and we are
Entonces,
hindering our own
estos
development.
gobiernos,
So these
tipo Macri,
governments,
tipo Moreno,
type
¿sí?
of Macri
no
and
obedecen a
Moreno,
los intereses nacionales,
do not look
obedecen
at
a
the
los
national
intereses
interest, but on
de
the
estos
contrary,
grupos
they're
transnacionales.
looking
Y ahí
after
se
the interests
explica
of the
esa cuestión.
transnational
Entonces, a ellos
groups.
les vale
So they
un
really
pepino,
don't
como decimos
care
aquí en Ecuador. No, les vale lo que pase.
whatever
¿no?
happens.
Si,
So
que se endeude el país, que quiebra el
that the
país, eso
government
no es
has too
¿no
much
es
debt
cierto?
or that they go
So Mario,
bankrupt,
one
they
last
really don't
question
care.
before we go, and I don't want to run out of time before I ask you, what do you see the future for Ecuador then, for 2020 and for even 10 years on? Do we still depend on this neoliberal model, these neoliberal parties, the same old parties, conservative parties that have ruled the politics in Ecuador, or do we expect new parties to come on, independent parties or outsiders, as you call them?
Sí. Mira, todo depende de
Well,
cómo
it
se
all
lleva a cabo el
depends
proceso electoral
on
del
how
año
the
2021,
electoral
¿no?
process
Que
is
arranca en este
carried
año
out
2020.
in the
Si
2020
las
21.
cosas se
If
desarrollan con transparencia
If everything
y
is
con racionalidad,
transparent,
yo le veo pocas posibilidades que gane la derecha.
I don't think that the
Pero hay el factor geopolítico.
right
que
wing
debería
will
ser
win.
sí, puede
But of course, there's
interferir
always this
para que
political
una opción
aspect
popular
where
no gane
a
las elecciones.
decision of the
De alguna
people
manera
will
puede
not
pasar.
win the
Sí.
elections. This could happen.
El desastre de Argentina fue
The
tan evidente
disaster
y la
in
votación
Argentina
fue
was
tan
so
amplia,
evident,
10
and
puntos de diferencia,
the margin of
era
the
imposible un
loss
fraude.
was so
Sí,
wide
era
that it was
imposible,
impossible to
¿no?
have any type of
Algo
fraud.
similar puede pasar inclusive en Brasil.
Something like this
No
could
sabemos qué
happen
puede
in
pasar aquí en
Brazil.
Ecuador.
We don't know
Tiene
what
que
could
ser
happen here in Ecuador.
una ganancia de la opción nacional popular tan amplia
The winning
que
should be
un fraude,
so
un
large
potencial
that a
fraude
potential
sea
fraud
olvidado, ¿no? O
would
sea
not be
neutralizado.
possible,
Entonces,
or that it
pero
be
hay que considerar
neutralized.
siempre esa variable. Ahora,
But of
yo
course,
creo que
we have to bear this in mind.
si hacen bien las cosas,
I think
la
that if
vertiente, digamos,
everything
popular,
is well done,
logran conformar una
the
alianza
popular movements
frente
are
a todo el
able to
desastre que existe en este país
to
en
make
estos
an
momentos,
alliance,
es posible que ganen.
then it's
Sí, es
possible
posible
that
que
they
ganen,
win.
porque yo no le veo que la derecha tenga opciones,
Because I don't
porque
think
han gobernado. Este
that
ha
the
sido el
right
gobierno
wing
de la
have
derecha.
any options, because
Estamos
they've
viendo todo el
ruled
desempleo y toda la pobreza
during
que
this
generan.
period, and we see
Entonces,
the
¿con qué cartas
poverty.
se van a presentar?
So,
Sí.
what are their
Yo creo
offers?
que ahí está,
I think that
está ahí digamos, la disyuntiva que se va a presentar en las
there is
próximas elecciones, ¿no?
the decision
Que los
that's
actores de
that's
uno
going
y otro
to
bando,
be
¿no?
posed for the next elections.
Jueguen las cartas limpias.
We need
y en el caso de las
transparency,
fuerzas populares,
and
sepan
that the
jugarlas bien
popular
y
forces
sepan corregir
play their
errores,
cards
como dice,
well,
y
correct
unirse
their
sobre todo. Aquí la unidad
mistakes,
es clave.
and find unity.
So we're looking at a unity, maybe not, for example, the indigenous leaders that became very popular during the protests in October, or the workers' unions or the transport unions that were also very important during the protests?
Sí, yo creo que tiene que unirse el movimiento indígena,
I think that the indigenous movement and the popular movements should gather up with the Correísmo movement. The popular movement that was shown in October was very clear. So these two large forces should come together. I think that's the only option that the Ecuadorian people have to get out of this crisis.
A country of unity that we are expecting for 2020. Thank you very much, Mario, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been talking to analyst Mario Ramos on what year 2020 has in store for Ecuador in the midst of social protests, political unrest, and economic hardships. Thank you for watching. This is Interviews from Quito. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Until next time.